Welcome, everybody, to what is number 7 of a series of conversations I've been having with whistleblowers, essentially called Breaking the Silence. And that's exactly what we intend to do. So, inviting various people from the NHS, people from the perspective of vaccine injury. And today, it's my unfortunate job to interview somebody who is absolutely convinced, and I'm absolutely convinced, their adopted son died of a vaccination related issue, but has just had no answers, justice, or anything. So I would say it's my pleasure, but it's not, if you see what I mean, to introduce Mr. Phillip Bevington. He likes to be called Tony, so I'll be calling him Tony throughout, but that's his name. Tony, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for sparing the time.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your background first before we talk about the adoption of your son? So we'll talk about your sort of career.
Fairly obvious looking at me. I'm a little bit of a hippie. I'm a 1940s child, and I was brought up in flower power era. So I'm a hippie. I'm proud of it because we love humanity and we think people are great. And I'm afraid at the moment, my philosophies of life are being blown into smithereens by the way everybody's behaving. But I had a self-sufficient farm in Cornwall for 20 years, loved it. Amazing growing your own food and producing all your own cheese and yogurt and things. And I did that for 20 years. My wife died at 48 years old. And so I signed up with VSO, Voluntary Services Overseas, and found myself 6 months later in the jungles of Papua New Guinea. And I loved it. It was crazy. And an amazing life. But I married a woman from Papua New Guinea and we had a daughter, but I adopted a son from there called Apio, Dixon Leo Apio. He was a smashing kid, traveled the world with me. We went to Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, and I taught agriculture to kids. My job was to improve diets for kids in very remote rural regions. So, for example, in Botswana, I was 400 miles from a shop, which is an interesting situation. I love that sort of lifestyle.
Well, you mentioned just before you've written an autobiography, haven't you? So we'll have to give that a plug.
My Wings of Destiny. It all ties in with being a hippie, doesn't it?
No, I know some of your story, and it is amazing, and it should be a
I've had a
bestseller.
great life, and I've no complaints about that. I just would like people to be more upfront and honest. And this experience has taught me that there's no one, it seems, or very few, in positions of authority are prepared to stand up and be honest about this. Yeah. I've written to my MP again and again, and perhaps I'm jumping the gun. My son Apio was a carer, and he was a damn good carer, and he was very well loved by his patients. And in line with the philosophy of the company, he got vaccinated. And some months later, he was taken ill. And we couldn't get to see a doctor because at that era, it was damn near impossible. So he came home and was with us. I nurtured him and looked after him, but he was slowly going downhill.
Can we go back to firstly when you adopted him at what age?
A birth.
A birth. And so when did he move back to the UK from Papua New Guinea?
We came back in around 1998 to 2000.
So he'd lived a life.
Period. And he was working. He went to school in Camborne. He played football with Holman's football team. He was a mad footballer. He loved it.
Holman's a good team, yeah. I've been beaten by him a few times. They got a good setup there. But I mean, but before the COVID era, you would say he was healthy or unhealthy?
I never saw the doctor. I mean, I've got his medical records. For 5 years prior to his vaccinations, he never saw a doctor. He was
run me through that then. So he's basically had the vaccine for occupational purposes.
Yeah, they said if you don't have it, we're afraid you won't be able to carry on working here. As a family, we had a discussion about this. I come from a line of doctors. My brother was a psychiatrist, a psychiatric consultant. My uncle was a doctor that delivered me. So I've been brought up with reverence for the medical profession.
But you also said you're a paramedic as well. You did.
I worked in London in the era of new paramedics starting. So what is existing now is nothing like what I had to put up with. But yeah, I've delivered hundreds of babies. I've been to murders, suicides, you name it, I've seen it. So it sort of makes you a bit tough.
Yeah, it does build your resilience. So he had his jab, his first one. What branding did he get in the lucky lottery or unlucky lottery? Which one?
He had AstraZeneca in January. He had AstraZeneca in March.
And how was he, before you move on? I mean, what was he like in between those? Was he okay?
Fine. Yeah, absolutely fine. In April, the MHRA published, don't give the AstraZeneca to young men. And we have to bear in mind, they never took into account his ethnicity. He was Melanesian through and through. He had none of my genes in him. And so he was a Melanesian. That was never taken into consideration. The last vaccine he had in October of 2021 was Pfizer. And from that moment onwards, he went downhill.
So again, it's that question. I've mentioned it in previous podcasts, stripping away most of the lack of clinical data, trial data and things. These combinations I kept hearing about, this Zeneca, Pfizer, Astra, Johnson, Moderna. There is literally no evidence to show that these three jabs given concurrently, there's any evidence of safety or efficacy, because they've never done those combinations. There's such random combos.
I've tried to get freedom of information requests on this subject, and there is nothing for.
There isn't. I mean, they literally at the end. I mean, it was very much if you had Pfizer at the start for whatever reason, and it seemed to be potluck. There was a bit of Pfizer snobbery at the start, quite ironically, and people demanded it. And people who had Zeneca first wanted Pfizer, but that soon went out the window, like the cryo. It had to be super frozen. The Pfizer one, but that went out the window. But in the end, they were leaving them on the sides, and people were getting whatever was left, and for no real clinical rationale. So he'd had this Pfizer. So literally, what was the timeline afterwards? Was it immediate?
No, it wasn't. It was progressive. He started to go downhill. He first of all became depressed because he'd lost some of his darling patients, some lovely old ladies, and they were introducing people from Toulouse Hospital who had COVID into his home. And of course, deaths were quite high. And it really upset him. He went into a slough of despond. He became really depressed. He couldn't talk. He was saying things like...
Did he ever give you any stories, Tony, about what was going on in his experiences? There's this controversy around zealous use of end-of-life drugs, for example.
He was very good about that. He maintained confidence totally.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm aware of what was going on because my daughter also is a carer, so we were picking up stuff on that. So by now he's bedbound. He doesn't come out of his bedroom for 18, 20 hours a day.
Is that mainly from that switch in his mental health?
Yes. But on top of that, he's got pains in his chest, which he's claiming are indigestion. As I said to you, I maybe should have been better off and off the mark and more aware, but I didn't. I allowed it to be as it was, and it progressed for 4 or 5 months. One night I was in bed, I heard him shout, I ran downstairs, he'd just had a shower, he was in the lounge saying, Dad, it hurts, my chest, and he fell into my arms and died. I laid him on the floor just behind me here, and we started CPR, my daughter, her partner, and myself. Ambulance turned up in 3 minutes. I've never known anything like it. And I have great regard for those guys. They did an amazing job. But I knew from my own experience, as soon as I looked at him, I knew that we weren't going to see him alive again. And so we went through the process then, coroner's office, taking him away. To be frank, I've never been so devastated in all my life by what's happened. It's destroyed me as a father, as you can see.
But again, as a father, this tragedy has happened. This tragedy has happened. You never expect your son to fall in your arms and pass.
Well, no, but that's trite.
But like any bereavement though, Tony, that people, there's a phases that you go through, aren't there? Not only the trauma that you witnessed, actually witnessing the death, the last moments, but then you're looking for answers because obviously he's had this back. I mean, why would you think? How old was he when he passed, if you don't mind?
32.
32-year-old, fit and healthy guy, played football to a decent level, and no comorbidities or drugs or anything. And suddenly he's talking to you about indigestion. That you shouldn't punish yourself about that because indigestion is very common.
Yeah,
Why would you think? Why would you think that he's dying of, these things that we're going to come on to talk about? So the process happened. So that just run us through from that moment. So
okay, coroner's office came, took him away. Honestly, society is not geared to help people in these circumstances. It's very lacking in compassion. Everything's done by the book. It's official. It's bureaucracy. And bureaucracy does not have compassion in its code. It doesn't exist. So
yeah, the whole process of death is very, like say, mechanical. It's very bureaucratic. Paperwork needs to, and I've been there for my own family's death.
We were organizing the funeral, coming to terms with it, trying to do the right thing by him. My daughter was making a booklet with his photographs in it. We had 20 or 30 Papua New Guineans who came from around the UK to his funeral, and we did traditional dancing in Tayaks, Papua New Guinean dancing in Tayaks for his celebration. But you're numb. You're completely and utterly numb. And it's only now, a year later, because it's coming up to 2 years that he died. It's only now that I'm really beginning to appreciate how I've been taken advantage of by the system.
Yeah. I mean, just to let the viewers know, me and you met in just a chance consultation in a surgery in Cornwall. And I think from the feedback you gave that you sort of realised from our early exchanges in that consult that I was not the same as other doctors. Hence we stayed in touch. But yeah, I mean, we've had runnings. Both of us have had runnings with the coroner. We're not going to mention names here, but the pathologist in question. I'm probably not going to go into that unless I have a weak moment in this interview. But so there's a post-mortem.
A lot worth saying about the coroner's system and the way it operates. It operates in total secrecy, which any government department that doesn't have transparency, you have to be suspicious of.
I'm going to share my story before we go on to yours, and quickly, I know you know it. So I was involved in a family asked me to witness a post-mortem on somebody that had deteriorated rapidly within a day or two of their second vaccine. They'd had the first, and they were literally wheeled chin on chest in for their second because, they're at risk. They were absolutely fine, by the way, here. They were fit and healthy. Witnessed the post-mortem. There was an off-record agreement that this was likely to do with the vaccine. Because of the quick deterioration, lots of pathology in the body in the post-mortem. The histology was being taken. I questioned, say, are you going to be checking this for spike protein? And I got looked at like I'd got two heads. Spike protein? What? Oh, we don't do that. I said, but how are you going to? This post-mortem is to determine is it COVID vaccine related or not. How are you going to do that if you don't do the test? And it was just like we had a little bit of an exchange. And I'm just there viewing. I'm there to watch. There's no shenanigans. Anyway, the inquest later on, sometime later, when all of the pathology had come back, having not stained for spike protein, which we know is perfectly stainable with immunohistochemistry stain. It stains brown. Not done. But the verdict of natural causes was declared by this doctor that had told me off in private that it was vaccine-related death. Or likely to be. Couldn't discount it, words to that effect. So that leads kind of into your situation. So obviously he's been taken to a funeral directors. No, he'd have been taken to the hospital, wouldn't he? The hospital chapel arrest.
Been taken to the coroner's for a post-mortem.
So he'd have gone to Trelisk.
Yes, and they did a post-mortem. And I called into question the post-mortem because, similarly to you, there were no platelets tests done, which would have confirmed, I believe I'm right in saying that it would have confirmed that it was vaccine damage.
Well, I've seen the post-mortem and I genuinely cried when I read it because this man's young. I don't know if you want to tell the public the sort of detail. What did your son die of in terms of
multiple pulmonary embolisms? two heart attacks, two ischemic heart attacks. The first one didn't kill him. So he'd had that for some months, which probably would explain why he lay in bed in pain. He was actually suffering a heart attack probably continuously.
But there were multiple. I mean, I remember reading it, and correct me if I'm wrong because it was a while ago. But there were lots of PEs, pulmonary emboli. It wasn't just one or two. It is across both fields of lungs.
But I read the chief coroner's advice to coroners about the suspicion that it could be COVID vaccine damage. None of the advice that was given by the chief coroner was followed by this coroner.
So there's one coroner that was awake to the potential.
I queried it,
but it was quashed.
Told, shut up, go away. If you think it's the vaccine, prove it.
And that's the thing, isn't it, Tony? It's that proof factor, because if you don't look for it, you don't find it.
If I was a rich man with £100,000 in the bank and a decent lawyer, I'd have fought him. But it's going to the inquest and getting an inquest once the post-mortem has been done is a major challenge.
Can you tell the viewers what the cause of death was agreed at the inquest?
Oh, the pathologist said it was natural causes.
So, just anyone who isn't medically trained, somebody who's deteriorated that rapidly after the Pfizer shot, again, combined with 2-Zeneca, for which there's no established safety data for that combo, deteriorates both mentally and physically with a crescendo of chest pains, leading to the big one, as it were, at the end. And no one suspects that temporal relationship to be the vaccine. You've probably been made to feel like a complete lunatic for even suggesting it. But there's absolutely nothing natural. As a doctor here, there's nothing natural about somebody dropping with multiple venous thromboembolisms in the number that your son's post-mortem reported, as well as not only the number of coronary blockages that he had, but it also commented about his myocardium had took a real battering. It was weak. There was damage to the ventricular wall, I think, if I remember reading it. So this was a heart that had been under attack for some time and eventually had succumbed. This wasn't natural causes. Like I say, the difference being one's a coronary issue, coronary circulation issue, and blocks. That's an arterial issue, whereas the other's a venous issue. So these different emboli work on different pathophysiological mechanisms. So this is not natural in any way in a fit, healthy person. Did you get anywhere with anyone?
No. What I got from the coroner was one of his associates phoning me up and saying, if you're going to persist with this, we suggest you get a decent solicitor.
So threats of lawfare. Threat,
I consider that is.
Yeah. So you've written to your MP. Any joy?
You're joking. What a waste of time.
Well, I know. I'm not going to mention those, but did you can if you want to, because it's up to you. But
I've written to the Camborne Redruth MP, and I've been ignored, essentially. He's blaming Wes Streeting, he's saying isn't coming back with the info. But after I saw him the day he was elected, and I gave him all the paperwork. And
is that Wes Streeting?
No.
You're Camborne, you're local.
Camborne MP. And he took it to Wes Streeting. But I've had absolutely nothing back. In fact, my view is that I've been blocked, because I belong to a group and we're all suffering the same thing. There's a whole number of ladies and gents in there who've got coroner problems. We're all being blocked.
Is this all related to the vaccine, or is this?
Yes, I belong to United Kingdom COVID vaccine injured and bereaved families. And there's a lot of us, and some terrible, really sad stories. Young women whose husbands have just dropped dead in front of them and they're bereft. And no one's giving a toss about them. They don't give a damn. And if you've got a government like that doesn't give a damn, they don't deserve to be in power. They should be shot out fast.
Well, we've seen it with the UK COVID inquiry, at least. It's not very different, the Scottish version of it. We spoke about the one of the Scottish Vaccine Injury Group co-founders yesterday, and very different. But the UK inquiries held no one accountable. Well, the world's not really held anyone accountable. No one. I don't understand how a doctor in 2025 can't look back and say mistakes were made. And I speak a lot, and I've just done a Substack on duty of candour. There's a reason it's called the duty of candour. They're constantly, the GMC are after me for bringing the profession into disrepute or negatively affecting the public confidence in the profession. Well, there's nothing that does either of those things better than this stonewalling you've had, this gaslighting you've had.
So why do they cover up? There's only one reason they cover up, is because they've got something to hide. What have they got to hide?
Like pardoning Anthony Fauci. Why do you need a pardon if you've done nothing wrong? That's the top example of that. But there's a whole psychology, and I've tried to fathom it out myself about, why are they staying quiet now? I mean, these are the people who are jabbing. The whole
prevention. You can only assume that they've made money out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's the financial aspect. It's the psychological stuff like the willful blindness, the cognitive dissonance, the mass formation, and it's ultimately the complicity. The medical profession, I believe, and I'll go in a court of law and state this, the evidence that is now published in peer-reviewed press, it's without reason, it's beyond reasonable doubt now. Yeah. And why people aren't speaking about it is because they administered the jab, they messed up, and this will be known as, and I've got no doubt about it, the biggest medical scandal in living history, not just recent modern history.
Asim Malhotra, don't you?
Yeah.
I sent his document to my MP and asked for a comment, and I've had nothing. Now, why don't they answer? They're hiding something. And I do fear that it might be that they're trying to reduce the population.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, but I'm just going to smile. You know my thoughts on that privately, but I'm already in enough trouble. Have you had anyone at all that's had any ounce of compassion in this, in terms of in the the hierarchy of medics or pathologists or coroners? Anyone at least you thought for a moment might just entertain that this death after the vaccine by 1,000 clots, essentially? Anyone lent into it, even privately, and looked around, make sure no one's listening, saying, yeah, you're probably right that this, because it happens to me. I have doctors tell me all the time, like behind closed, they come and lock the door. So in fact, at the surgery that we met at, come in saying, I've got a load of these vaccine injuries, I think. How are you managing them? But making sure that conversation is not witness recorded and a locked door. I saw that at that surgery without naming it, but, even the staff. Well, Tony, even at that surgery, there were, as I've shared with you, there was vaccine injury nurses had heart problems after the vaccine, administering the vaccine to patients despite refusing any more themselves. Now, this is an NHS issue because 80% of the NHS stopped.
My son his vaccines.
Yeah. I've discovered all sorts of nasty stuff. I've seen people I know people who are unvaccinated who've got their medical records and found locally, and I won't name surgeries, but who've had vaccines recorded in their notes that they haven't had, flu and COVID.
Have you come across the book Worth a Shot by the lady in Utah, Brianne Dressen? She was.
Oh, I know that person.
She was one of the first to be experimented on by AstraZeneca, and as soon as she said adverse reactions, they dumped her like a hot cake.
It's cult behaviour, isn't it, Tony? It's cult behaviour. Like you say, and how high this runs up, I can only say from my own. I've been on the phone this morning to police, solicitors, all sorts today, because of the fallout of my stance of speaking out about medical ethics, patient safety, concerns about lockdowns and masks. And the most damning thing I ever did was stand up for vaccine injured and mainly listen, but then learn to try and help them in sort of naturopathic ways. And I'm learning as we go, but they're my crimes, and that's led to police reports. GMC are going to be striking me off without doubt. I'm not going back. I've told them that. I'm handing my license back, and I don't want to be part of their dark system. And so I felt like a weight lifting when that happened. So I'm just dealing with the remnant. I'm not coming back. They drove me to a dark place. That's all I'm going to say now.
I'm kind of there at the moment. I've been driven to serious anger.
I wanted to ask you about that. So where are you at the moment? Because I know
I go to bed at night, and I'm aware that every time I go to bed, and I have to say I'm 85 years old, I think, am I not going to wake up in the morning? That would be quite a pleasure. I'm not a suicidal type person, but I've been driven to thinking about it. And I've been driven to think about suicide by the behavior of my government.
And there's not just you, is there? I mean, you're in the COVID vaccine injury family, aren't you?
All of us, we all have our back down moments. We have nightly Zoom calls to try and lift us up a bit.
But it's as a direct reason. The reason for the feeling like that is the despondency, the screaming into the abyss and no one listening, the gaslighting, the dismissiveness of the medical profession.
They are out and out lies.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I gave the example of this coroner that admitted that it was vaccine, but then when natural causes, yours have been called natural causes, your son. I could go through examples of dishonesty that I've seen, and we could be talking till, the end of Christmas this year because there's so much dishonesty I've seen in my profession. And for calling it out, guess who the fall guy is? The doctor who calls it out, the whistleblower,
Yeah.
zero tolerance.
Even me, I mean, I've been in trouble with it. I wrote to the coroner a couple of days ago, and I noticed that on the top now they've ceased to look at his. They've stopped investigating it.
Did you get any replies from any of the MP letters, or just
No,
ignored?
I've had one letter from my MP, my Camborne MP, which said absolutely nothing. It was a complete and utter waste of time. It was a pacifier to me, and I wrote back and said, "You're corrupt." And
I can't get how people can't equate. You keep hearing correlation doesn't equal causation, but as I repeatedly keep saying, coincidences are coincidences if they happen once in a blue moon.
They're rubbing salt in the wound, aren't they? With safe and effective and rare.
But they're still giving it. Yeah, they acknowledge the rare, but if rare keeps happening, then it's not rare anymore.
And anyway, how do they define rare?
Yeah, well, I spoke to a pharmacology scientist yesterday, and he was saying, these vaccines, the rates that were being published, even in, the clinical trial phase, they well exceeded the levels of adverse events. So I can't remember the exact figures, where previous products with even as much fractional red flag adverse event reports would have been pulled. Yet this was categorically causing myocarditis and clots, and yet it proceeded despite much higher rates of adverse events.
Come to the COVID inquiry, and appallingly, Sajid Javid said he didn't even know about the yellow card scheme.
I know. My jaw dropped from my face. I couldn't believe it.
I was completely, utterly dumbfounded. How can you run the health service of a country and not be aware of what's there for the people?
The amount of people I know that aren't aware that the vaccine doesn't stop transmission, and you're like, well, they admitted that. Pfizer admitted that, and if something doesn't stop transmission, then why are we mandating it? Because if your vaccine's safe and effective, then you don't matter what Tony Bevington or Dave Cartland's vaccine status is, you're protected. So jog on. What's it got to do with you? But it's these people that are angry at you, viscerally angry, because you're not vaccinated. But yeah, were you offered the vaccine? Just to touch on.
I am vaccinated.
You had it.
Yep, I had three Pfizers.
You were Pfizered like me.
However, I believe I'm not affected by it because of what I take as my medicine.
Do you want to embellish on that?
I'm a cannabis advocate. I've been taking cannabis for the last 50 years, and I mean, I'm 85. I'm not doing bad for 85, am I?
You're looking good.
I've got my wits about me. I haven't got my hair, but I've got my wits about me. I can still have a good debate, an intellectual argument. I can't run anymore, but I'm an honest human being. For your information, Dave, I was brought up a Quaker and a humanist, and I'm a pacifist by belief. I don't have any religious beliefs. I'm purely, everything should be done with one rule and one rule in life only: do nothing to hurt anybody else.
That sounds like far-right extremism in 2025, doesn't it? That's what they reckon, isn't it? I mean, like you said, that's my position.
Freedom of choice, freedom of anything. Just don't hurt anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I'll share that view. But again, you get labelled as at least far-right, right-leaning or whatever.
I don't care. I couldn't care less.
I know. Labels, that's all they've got ad hominem.
I teach breathing, breath work. And part of the philosophy of that is what other people think of you is none of your business.
Yeah, that's a good philosophy. I wish I could. Yeah, I engage too much with the trolls because they've made my life hell, literally.
Well, I can understand because they get under your skin and they irritate.
Yeah, well, if it was just the online Dr. Carton's a Fruit Loop, I wouldn't mind it, but it's the fact that they're on the phone to various people constantly.
You'll be surprised in Camborne how many people respect you very sincerely and deeply.
Yeah, well, as you know, I had to leave that surgery because it just got unrelenting.
Just for that, I've got one friend in particular that I'm thinking of. We meet on a Sunday morning, and she's a great admirer of yours.
Oh, bless her. No, yeah, I've got, like I say, I get lots of really encouraging messages from the locality, from members of the public. I'm just waiting for that one doctor to reach out now, and it's not happened. I'd love to have one doctor from Cornwall just say, "You're all right, Dave. You've got balls of steel." I've been told that by practice managers. I went to a surgery in Newquay, Stenac, I'll name them, and
Yeah,
I
but you
went.
haven't, have you? Because it's affected you emotionally
Well, no,
too.
they called me in the office. The woman actually locked the door, the practice manager, and she looked around, made sure nobody sort of see this evil doctor in the building. I went for an informal chat, and she called me in and said, "I just want to let you know, I've when your CV came in, it caused quite a stir." I was like, "Okay." It's quite a good CV. It's got lots of qualifications and experience. She said they were discussing your position as an anti-vaxxer. I said, well, I've had the vaccine. I've had two, and it's not a vaccine. She goes, looked around again, made sure no one was looking, said, oh, I've watched some of your videos last night. I think you've got balls of steel or words to that effect. And she said, my kids aren't going to get vaccinated. I've not been vaccinated. I said, how are you managing to get on here? Because this is like the vax cultist centre of the whole of Cornwall. Anyway, she said, don't worry, I'm going to get you an interview here. I'm going to let you, she give me continue with the tour around, kept me away from the doctors for obvious reasons. And then 2 days later, I get a letter saying, unfortunately, your application will not be taken any further. And that was it.
So my son was Papua New Guinean, and in Papua New Guinea, they practice what's an eye for an eye. You have an enemy, and I belong to a particular tribe called the Asaro Mudmen, who are brilliant. If someone hurts me, they'll go out and kill for me. Someone's killed my son. I dread any of those guys going to Papua New Guinea because they'll be dead. I will put the word out.
That's I mean, I'm not going to comment on that, but I'm going to say that that's what the emotions of this have done to you.
Sure.
You know, they've driven you to that anger that, I mean, when you've got anger, you need to release it, and there's no.
If they'd met me and talked about it and been honest, I wouldn't feel like this. But
There's no closure.
no, none whatsoever. And I suspect I'll go to my grave with no closure. And I shall come back and haunt them.
It's tragic, honestly. I just don't know what to say. I mean, I've had
I'm
to
not
leave.
the only one, though. There's lots of people out there. So, and I don't want me to be special. We all are special, and we all need to be loved and cared for and heard.
Like I say, these stories are coming thick and fast. They're not stories. I don't mean to. That's disrespectful, really. But these case histories are thick and fast, and you know this is the purpose of this Substack, to get these stories out there, because apart from within closed groups that are highly censored, I remember one of the vaccine injury groups went completely viral, hundreds of thousands of people on Facebook. Then suddenly it got bumped by Meta. And people were comparing notes and whispering. That's the last thing these people want: people in a room talking openly about it, because they want to cast you into the corner like leprosy.
There's a big demo on March the 9th.
Where's that, in Cornwall?
I was told it's in Cornwall. I know there's one in London.
Yeah, this is my worry. I mean, where's the anger? We've talked about vax bereavement in your case. There's lots of vaccine injury. There's lots of realization. Whilst I'm not inciting people to be hating on doctors, you know, there needs to be some accountability, admission that we messed up. Like I said, the duty of candor earlier. But where is the anger? Right at the beginning of this, I went to the first Truro march and it was packed. You know, the whole of that, where the market set up, was jammed shoulder to shoulder. And it soon fizzled out. And that upsets me, that the public, people just want this to go away now. It happened. But the scars of this are literal scars that are going to haunt you till your last breath. Scars that are going to haunt me. We've probably all got PTSD, anyone who's been victim
I'm
of
sure I have.
any of this. Yeah. And it's just tragic. And all I can do really is thank you, Tony, for sharing your story. It's each one of these I do is emotionally quite harrowing to hear.
Sure, of course.
And I can't imagine how you feel. Have you got people around you now?
No, I'm all on my own, but I got the dog.
You got the dog. Do you take the dog out a lot?
He and I are buddies, you know, and we'll just sit and chat together.
Oh, bless you.
I'm a radio ham as well. I have a really nice radio shack, and I can go and chat around the world if I want.
Brilliant. So what I want you to do when we finish is send me the link to your autobiography. So
yeah, sure.
Anyone who wants to read the life of this legend in front of us, because the reason we stayed in touch is because you are an absolutely incredible person, and we clicked from the first minute.
I decided yesterday because I was driving home the other day and a voice said to me, and it was my son. He said, "Dad, stop wasting your time." So I've decided that I have to, because it's becoming obsessional. So I'm going to finish my second book, which will include his story in it, but also other things that I've done.
No, that is good therapy in a way, isn't it? Because you're never going to be helped by the medical profession. That's a fact now. You've known that. You've been at it for 2 years now, and you do have to. And I'm in that phase of closure now where I'm quite happy with the career side of it, but the same with the bereavement that you've suffered of your son. You know, your beloved son has, been Pfizered, murdered. We're never going to prove it.
There's no other way of putting it.
Yeah, there's no other way of
putting it. Killed my son.
It's just impossible, isn't it? It's crime without any sort of repercussion.
Yeah, but we're more and more sliding into that sort of situation. You know, it's everything. You may not contribute to all the other things they're going to do to us in the future, but they're going to stop us driving. They're going to control our money.
Yeah, I mean, across your 85 years, it must be astounding what you've seen accelerate over the last 5 years. So,
in the 60s, it was an amazing country. We were so full of community, and we all mucked in together, and that to be streets. But now there's division and hate, and I think the government have engendered it deliberately.
Oh, absolutely. Poking the bears left, right, and centre. Yeah. It's division, and a divided populace.
A lot of us have the Stockholm syndrome and don't recognise it.
That's a really good way of putting it. I've always called it Stockholm. I've called my role as a doctor as Stockholm syndrome. People just can't leave it, both for the Stockholm syndrome of NHS policy, but also the financial capture. You get used to the quality of life. I remember questioning that coroner we talked about, and the reason for not speaking out was quality of life would be compromised. And so
that's selfish.
Yeah, well, every doctor in the country that hasn't spoken out, the amount of doctor messages I get every day, nurses, paramedics, and you ask them the same question: are you going to speak out? No. We see what they've done to you. And we got this mortgage, just bought this new Rolls Royce, whatever. But it's everything but the reason they became doctors.
I would leave this country tomorrow. I'm ashamed of my government.
Where would you go? Say if you got a one-way ticket to anywhere, where'd you spend?
New Guinea. I love the country. I love the people.
I've just got an image of you like dancing around the fire in your regalia.
You see me with my little loincloth and my penis gourd on.
Your penis what?
Penis gourd.
Okay.
They stick a calabash type squash case on their penis. It's a whole different way of life. Superfoods, fruits. I love some of the fruits that we would get and some of the food. We used to cook food in bamboo tubes because we didn't have a kitchen. We'd cook over an open fire in the garden. It was back to basics. And
Can I ask about that? So in Papua New Guinea, what's it like, the medical system? So you've got all these people eating superfoods, cooking out in the open, freshly cooked. What's the health of the people like?
Cancer is very rare. The trouble is, as soon as the white man appeared, we started corrupting them. And one of the corruptions, sorry, Dave, one of the corruptions was missionaries. They did far more harm than good. And you'd hear me in Papua New Guinea saying to all my friends, if I were you, I'd kick the white man out.
Yeah.
Because I just don't see us doing any good. But our daily lives would be down the garden, dig a bit. I lived on an island called Duke of York Islands, and the chief said to me, well, we'll do a little bit. And then I said, right, what's work now? And he said, work? What for? And we've lost that. We've lost it completely. We're materialistic. We're capitalistic. We don't care about each other.
What was the health of the people like? Were they in good health? Like you say,
pretty good. I did have to go to a doctor once. They only have private doctors. So I went. I had an infection, and he said, I'll give you an injection. Drop your trousers. So I dropped my trousers, and I said, why aren't you doing it? And he said, I can't stop laughing. I've never seen a white ass before.
Brilliant. Brilliant. But that's probably a really good time to end things. I don't want to hear any more about what. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Bless you. Tony, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you ever so much for
My
sharing the
pleasure.
story.
Thanks for hearing me.
I know the impact this has had on you from remaining in contact with you, and please do remain in contact because I think you're an amazing man.
Thank you very much, Dave.
All right, you take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right,
Have a
take
good
care.
day.
Bye-bye. Bye.